Hello, beautiful Leo souls. This is your deeply personal horoscope reading for May 28th through May 31st. And if you're here, I need you to hear this right away. Your grandmother is trying to reach you. And the message she sent me in a dream might just change your life forever. Have you ever felt like something, or someone, pulled you to a place without explanation? Like your finger hovered over a video and something in your gut said, click it. That's not an accident. That's alignment. That's the universe calling. And yes, Leo, today it's calling your name. You've arrived at eternal mindfulness, not just another astrology channel, but a sacred space where the stars, the cards, and your inner truth come together to whisper what your soul may have forgotten. And today, there's a whisper so loud it cannot be ignored. In a dream so vivid it jolted me awake, your grandmother came through. She wasn't just a figure in the fog. She was radiant, composed, and completely certain. Her eyes met mine with an intensity one can't describe in words. And what she said was simple, but powerful. They can no longer shrink their light. Leo, this message was meant for you. And it carries the weight of something far greater than a simple prediction. It's a calling. A sacred awakening. You see, the universe doesn't bring you to videos like this out of boredom or randomness. You're here because your soul is ready. You may not realize it yet, but something inside of you has been reaching out, hoping, even silently screaming for confirmation. And this is it. We're standing at a cosmic intersection. Between who you've been pretending to be, and who you truly are. This isn't just a horoscope. This is a remembrance. A mirror. A lifeline. And over the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through the message your grandmother brought from the spirit realm, one that touches your heart, your past, your future, and the very core of your being. Before we dive in, let me take a moment to say this, thank you. Thank you for showing up. For being open. For allowing your energy to join ours here at Eternal Mindfulness. Every like, every comment you share from the heart, and every subscription brings you deeper into this growing family of truth seekers. From the bottom of my heart, I thank you. Your presence here fuels this space, and allows us to keep delivering these life-shifting messages. And trust me, Leo, you'll want to stay with me until the very last second of this video. Because what's about to be revealed may not only reshape how you see yourself, but how you walk your path from this moment forward. So let me ask you, what happened in your spirit that led you here today? Comment below and let the universe know. You're ready. She stood there, draped in white, enveloped in a golden radiance that pulsed like the quiet rhythm of the cosmos itself. Her eyes were not just looking, they were seeing. Seeing through illusions, through masks, through the weight you've been carrying. In the dream, your grandmother didn't speak with urgency, but with calm certainty, as though her words had already been written into the stars long ago. And what she said echoed with such clarity that it vibrated through the very core of your being. You can no longer be the one who endures. You must now be the one who chooses. This moment in your horoscope, May 28th to May 31st, is not just a window in time. It is a mirror. A portal. An invitation. Astrologically, Jupiter is amplifying your inner compass, asking not, what do you want, but, what are you no longer willing to tolerate? And that question, though simple, holds the power to redirect your entire path. For Leo, a sign ruled by the sun itself, this is about realigning with your rightful place at the center, not to dominate, but to radiate. This grandmother, whether literal or symbolic, represents a wisdom line that flows through your blood and energy, not from ancient rituals or mysticism, but from lived human experience. Her presence in the dream is not some fantastical omen, but rather a psychic representation of what you've been too tired, too hurt, or too loyal to admit, that you have reached a threshold. And thresholds, though uncomfortable, are sacred. They demand one thing above all: honesty. To suffer is human. To keep suffering when the way forward is clear, that is a choice. Not one of blame, but of awakening. And this is what the dream is offering you now. There is a concept, not exclusive to any religion, that suffering becomes a teacher only when we stop clinging to it. As long as we identify with the pain, as long as it becomes part of our story, I'm the one who gets overlooked, I always hold it together for everyone else, then we are imprisoned by our own narrative. But when we see suffering as something we have outgrown, something we no longer need to learn from, then we are free to step forward, lighter, clearer, unapologetically aligned. The repeating appearance of the number 1 in your environment is no coincidence. In numerology, 1 signifies leadership, self-initiation, and most importantly, conscious beginning. It's not about waiting for permission. It's about standing still just long enough to hear your own breath, your own heartbeat, and then saying, yes. I choose me now. This is not selfishness, it is sacred responsibility. What you're facing right now may not be dramatic on the outside, but it is radical on the inside. A subtle shift from endurance to choice. From being a container for everyone else's emotions, to finally becoming a container for your own truth. And while that shift may seem small, energetically, it's seismic. Because it will change the way you speak, move, ask, give, and most of all, the way you receive. So if your dreams have been louder, your emotions more tender, or your resistance growing stronger, listen. That is your inner self knocking, not for escape, but for entrance. Jupiter expands whatever it touches, and right now it's lighting up your internal contradictions, the parts of you that say, I'm fine, while quietly wondering, is this all there is? Your grandmother's message is not meant to rescue you, but to remind you, you were never meant to carry the entire world on your shoulders. You were meant to illuminate it, by being wholly, bravely, joyfully yourself. The image is clear and quietly haunting, a golden aura, once brilliant and untamed, now dulled by a fine layer of dust, the residue of doubts never spoken, judgments long absorbed, and pain never truly released. This isn't the kind of dimming that happens overnight. It's gradual, often invisible to the person wearing it. But if you're a Leo, you know this better than most. You were born under the sign of light, ruled by the sun itself. And yet, even the brightest star in our sky is obscured when the atmosphere is heavy enough. This section of your horoscope isn't here to accuse you of hiding, it's here to offer you the language to name what's been slowly, gently veiling your radiance. Recognition. Approval. Applause. These are powerful currencies, especially for those whose life path involves inspiring others. But when your desire to be seen becomes stronger than your desire to be true, something starts to twist inside. That's what we call the trap of false glory, the illusion that if you just keep doing what gets you validation, everything will be okay. Until one day, the applause doesn't land the same. The praise feels hollow. And you realize that you've been performing on a stage that was never yours. There's a paradox in Leo energy. You shine naturally, but you've been taught to perform for permission to shine. And that conditioning, that constant external seeking, is what turns a gift into a burden. It's not your light that's failing. It's the story you've attached to how that light should be received. So let's change the story. During the final days of May, the planetary alignments are nudging you to reclaim your center. Jupiter's expansive energy isn't just pushing growth, it's revealing where your energy has been leaking. That fatigue you feel isn't laziness, it's the weight of performing someone else's version of your life. That hesitation before speaking your truth, that's your soul recognizing how many times it's been interrupted in favor of staying likable. There's a concept, drawn from contemplative traditions, that what we resist most is not darkness, but our own light. Why? Because the full expression of your light demands responsibility. It requires you to stand alone sometimes. It asks you to disappoint others in order to honor yourself. And it often means stepping away from environments where you were celebrated for being who you're not. This is where the law of attraction shifts from philosophy to practicality. When you curate a version of yourself for acceptance, you magnetize people who fall in love with the mask, not with you. But when you show up without armor, when your joy is unfiltered and your pain unpolished, you start attracting truth, real opportunities, aligned relationships, sustainable success. That's the paradox. You stop performing, and suddenly, the right audience finds you. Tarot speaks clearly here. The Sun card reminds you of your core essence, not performative, but radiant. The Moon acknowledges your hidden self, the fears and insecurities you hide behind charisma. And the Queen of Wands, a fiery feminine figure, urges you to claim your power without apology, to radiate from the inside out, not outside in. As May comes to a close, reflect gently on this. Are you standing on a stage that was built from your truth, or someone else's blueprint? Because if it's not yours, no matter how much applause you get, it will never feel like home. There's a kind of wealth that begins long before the money arrives. It starts with a shift, subtle but undeniable, in how we allow ourselves to receive. Leo, you are ruled by the sun, and like the sun, your instinct is to give warmth, creativity, loyalty, presence. But when giving becomes your identity and not just your expression, something essential gets blocked, the natural flow of energy that says, you're allowed to receive just as fully. That blockage, though it may show up in your bank account, often begins in your mind. Around May 29th and 30th, energetic conditions favor breakthroughs in finances, but not in the usual, work harder, hustle more, way. Instead, they're asking for something far more radical, surrendering the idea that you have to prove your worth before wealth finds you. Astrologically, this is a powerful moment. As Jupiter expands your perspective and solar influences heighten your desire for self-respect, you're likely to come face to face with a long-held belief that receiving, especially financial abundance, must be earned through struggle or solitude. But here's the truth hiding beneath that belief: it's not nobility keeping you from abundance. It's fear disguised as pride. Imagine a golden stream, constantly flowing toward you. It's not abstract, it's there, all the time. But in your field, there's a boulder that interrupts its flow. That boulder is a false form of pride, a need to do it all alone, to not owe anyone, to deserve it beyond question. These are the words of a self that was once hurt, overlooked, or made to feel that asking is weakness. But in reality, refusing support doesn't make you stronger, it makes you isolated. And isolation is a poor soil for prosperity to grow in. This is where the teachings of presence and self-awareness come in. When you begin to observe your own discomfort around receiving, whether it's a compliment, a gift, or a financial offer, you start to see that the discomfort isn't about the thing. It's about the story. A story that says, if I accept this, maybe I'll owe something, or maybe they won't respect me, or worst of all, maybe I'm not supposed to have it easy. But life isn't here to be earned through pain. It's here to be lived through awareness. And from that awareness, your real power begins. In the tarot, the Six of Pentacles speaks to the balance of giving and receiving, not as opposites, but as complementary forces. The Empress reminds you that creation, abundance, and softness are not luxuries, they are your natural state when you stop resisting your own fertility. The Magician, with one hand pointed to the heavens and the other to the earth, reminds you that manifestation doesn't require you to force outcomes. It requires you to channel, openly, honestly, and without ego. You may wish to try a small ritual these days. Place one hand on your solar plexus, your third chakra, and one on your heart, the fourth. Breathe slowly, and repeat, I am worthy of receiving without needing to prove. This simple act reconnects the center of self-power with the center of self-love, and from that alignment, everything can change. Even colors can help recalibrate your frequency. On May 29th and 30th, wear golden yellow to activate radiant confidence, earthy orange to anchor your security, and royal purple to remind your spirit that dignity and abundance can, and should, walk side by side. Wealth is not something you chase. It's something you allow, when you finally stop standing in your own way. Sometimes the most difficult person to walk away from isn't the one who hurt you, but the one who stood beside you while your light quietly dimmed. It's the friend who always needed you to play the smaller role, the partner who loved the version of you that didn't challenge their comfort, or the mentor who once uplifted you but now subtly resists your growth. These connections don't always come with red flags or chaos. In fact, that's what makes them harder to recognize, and even harder to release. Because when someone is familiar, helpful, or kind in just enough ways, you begin to question your discomfort. You tell yourself to stay loyal. But deep down, your body knows. Your energy knows. And this is the moment to listen. This particular phase in your horoscope speaks to release, but not out of resentment, out of self-respect. The imagery from your dream was precise, a golden cage, not a rusted one. That matters. Because what traps you now is not cruelty, but comfort. Not abuse, but attachment. And the voice of your grandmother, the voice of inner wisdom, is telling you with gentle urgency that it's time to leave. Not because they're bad, but because they're no longer aligned with the path you must take next. The Eight of Cups in Tarot represents this emotional maturity, the willingness to leave even when nothing is burning, simply because your soul has already outgrown the space. This card doesn't show someone fleeing. It shows someone choosing. That distinction matters. Walking away from a connection like this requires clarity, not conflict. Compassion, not confrontation. And most importantly, it requires permission, from you, to evolve beyond what once felt safe. There's a teaching in meditative philosophy that says, what we cling to most tightly is usually the very thing limiting our freedom. This isn't about blame. It's about truth. The people we outgrow aren't wrong for staying the same, but we are responsible if we keep pretending we haven't changed. Growth doesn't require permission from others. It asks for presence, honesty, and courage. And that courage begins not in dramatic breakups or declarations, but in a quiet act of recognition: this isn't where I belong anymore. If this message is resonating with you, consider a simple yet profound practice. Write a letter, not to send, but to release. A letter to that person, where you acknowledge their role in your journey, express gratitude if it's real, and then speak your truth. What did you shrink to stay close? What did you silence to keep the peace? What part of you is now ready to breathe again? Let the words come without censorship. Let them speak the version of you that's been waiting to be heard. As the lunar cycle nears its final days in May, the energy is ripe for clearing. Not just physical clutter, but emotional residues. It's a powerful time for making space, not just in your schedule, but in your soul. The Death card in tarot is often misunderstood as a negative omen, but it's actually one of the most sacred cards in the deck. It represents endings with purpose. The kind that makes space for a truer, freer life. And when paired with the Ace of Wands, it becomes a clear message: end this cycle, and a spark will return. Your fire will find air again. You don't need permission to choose yourself. You don't need proof that it's time. All you need is that quiet inner nod, the one you've probably felt for a while, that says, I'm ready to stop shrinking. Let this be the moment you walk toward expansion, even if you're walking alone. Because walking alone toward your truth is far more empowering than staying accompanied in your limitation. Strength is not the absence of tears, but the willingness to let them fall and still choose to move forward. Somewhere along the way, especially for Leo, the sign of radiant courage and regal charisma, the world began to expect you to always be the strongest person in the room. The motivator. The protector. The one who never flinches. And in that expectation, something quietly got buried: your right to feel fully, deeply, vulnerably. Your right to not have it all together every single day. This part of your journey is about removing the armor that was never really yours to begin with. It's about acknowledging that the mask of "I'm fine" may have once protected you, but now it keeps you from being truly seen. Real light doesn't need to be forced. It emerges when there is nothing left to hide. And ironically, the most powerful thing you can do this week is allow yourself to soften. Your grandmother's words in the dream echo here in perfect alignment: true strength is not in never crying, but in crying, and then continuing, as if you never broke. It's not denial, and it's not martyrdom. It's something far more grounded, an embodiment of resilience that includes your humanity. When you push your emotions down, you create tension not just emotionally, but energetically. The heart tightens. The breath shortens. The world starts to feel heavier than it really is. But when you allow yourself to feel without shame, something unlocks, space returns, and so does clarity. There's a beautiful truth shared across ancient wisdom traditions, the idea that what we resist persists. When we resist our own softness, our own doubt, our own fatigue, we're not actually protecting ourselves. We're separating from the very part of us that holds the capacity to heal. The part that wants to be held. The part that wants to breathe. And transformation only begins when we stop pretending we don't need it. Numerologically, the number 5 is speaking strongly to you right now. It's the number of change, movement, and bold decision-making. But most people misunderstand change. They think it's a giant leap, a sudden breakthrough. In reality, true transformation is usually quiet. It happens when you look in the mirror and finally say, "I'm allowed to show up exactly as I am." It's in these moments that life begins to reflect back something different. That's why May 31st has such significance. It's a mirror day, energetically speaking, a time when what you say to yourself, even silently, begins to duplicate itself in your outer world. If you affirm your wholeness, life affirms it back. If you continue whispering old judgments, they echo louder than ever. So be mindful. This is not a time to be careless with your words, especially the ones you speak internally. There's a ritual I invite you to try, simple but profound. Stand in front of a mirror. Look into your own eyes, and say aloud 3 times, "I choose to love myself, fully, without condition." It may feel strange at first. You may even cry. But those tears are not weakness, they are evidence that you are no longer abandoning yourself. That you are no longer performing strength. You are being it. And just like the Leo who once turned down a major performance to care for their ailing mother, only to be offered something even greater afterward, you too are being asked to trust that soft choices lead to solid miracles. Your courage is not diminished when you pause. Your future does not disappear when you take a breath. In fact, it often begins right there. If you're still here with me, still breathing through these words, then I believe something inside you has already started to awaken, perhaps not fully, perhaps still quietly, but undeniably. Maybe it's a small flicker behind your ribs, a soft knowing that says, "I am meant for more than this shrinking." Or maybe it's a rising courage in your chest, asking not for permission, but simply for space to be seen. So let me ask you gently, and with all sincerity, what are you still afraid will happen, if you stop apologizing for your light? What part of you still believes that full visibility comes at the cost of rejection? That if you dare to be fully you, loud or soft, messy or brilliant, someone, somewhere, will decide you're too much? But what if you're not too much? What if you're finally enough for the life that's been circling you, waiting for you to meet it halfway? Leo, the universe is not withholding anything from you. Your rewards are not in delay. Your success is not stuck behind some cosmic red tape. More often than not, what we think of as delay is actually a kind of divine pause, a pause that asks us to recalibrate our own readiness. A pause that says, turn your own light switch on first. You don't need external confirmation to become who you are. You just need to stop dimming when no one is clapping. This journey you're on, of letting go, of softening, of choosing truth over performance, it's not easy. It takes courage to walk away from the familiar, even if it no longer fits. It takes maturity to admit that staying small won't make anyone else more comfortable in the long run. And it takes trust to believe that your full expansion won't cost you love. It will deepen the love that matters most. So today, don't just survive another cycle. Don't just wait for the next retrograde to explain your stagnation. Don't just check your daily horoscope and move on unchanged. Today, I invite you to take conscious action, no matter how small. It could be speaking your truth in one honest sentence. Saying no where you've always said yes. Or simply breathing into your chest and saying out loud, I am ready to live without shrinking. If you feel called, share that moment of bravery with us. Drop a comment that says, I'm Leo, and I'm ready to let the world see who I really am. Say it out loud, write it down, let it be known. And if this message stirred something inside you, if it mirrored something you've long felt but couldn't name, then I invite you to like this video. Not for the algorithm, but for yourself. Because a like isn't just a button, it's a signal. A cosmic yes to your own readiness. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel. Not just so you stay connected, but so that every message waiting for you in the future finds its way home. Let me thank you, from the bottom of my heart, for being here, for being open, and for choosing to meet this version of yourself with love instead of resistance. Your support, your presence, your willingness to grow, it fuels this space, and it inspires everyone who walks this path alongside you. And above all, remember this, radiance is not a reward. It's your birthright. It's not a gift you have to earn, it's a truth you have to claim. And I believe, Leo, you are ready.